delighted to be here. I'm originally from Massachusetts, but when I was young, I emigrated to the United States and decided to stay. Look, there are two teams in the United States, and they want to go in two very different directions. Back 100 years ago, 50 years ago, we had two parties, but if somebody told you they were Republican, all you knew about them was that they were born north of the Mason-Dixon line. It didn't tell you anything about their worldview. And there were little old ladies in Mississippi who agreed with Ronald Reagan on absolutely everything and voted for George McGovern because Sherman was mean to Atlanta recently. And we had these two regional parties. And it was very confusing because everything was bipartisan because the two parties really didn't mean much in terms of telling you about a candidate or a voter. But during the lifetime of Ronald Reagan, the two parties and tendencies have sorted themselves out in a more rational way. And those of us in the center-right, Reagan Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, are all sort of moving in the same direction. And if you want to know sort of why everyone on our team is there, I think the easiest way to understand is if we were sitting around a table, everybody's there because on their vote-moving issue, what they want from the government is simply to be left alone. They're not asking the government to go steal stuff for them. They're not asking the government to go push somebody else around. They simply wish to be left alone. So who's around the table? Taxpayers? Don't raise my taxes. Businessmen and women, professionals, leave my professional life alone. Don't tax or regulate my business life and my business. Homeschoolers, let me educate my own kids. They don't go knocking on your door and tell you you should be a homeschooler. They simply wish to be left alone. The Second Amendment community. I serve on the board of directors of the National Rifle Association. People who simply wish to be left alone with their gun rights. They don't go insisting that you be a hunter. They just simply wish to be left alone. All the various communities of faith. People for whom the most important thing in their life is practicing their faith and raising their children, ask only that the government leave them alone in that zone. And that's why on the center-right we have evangelical Protestants, conservative Catholics, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, and Mormons who don't agree on who gets to heaven or why. But they do agree that the government should leave us all alone, so the guy over on the other side of the table, who completely misunderstands Scripture, is going straight to Hades. But I need to be left alone so that I can get to heaven. And around our table, it's not necessary that everybody agree on some 20-point manifesto. Point of fact, that the fellow who wants to make money all day looks across the table at the guy who wants to go to church all day and says, that's not how I spend my time. And they both look over at the guy who wants to fondle his guns all day, and they say, that's not how we spend our time. But it's not necessary that we agree what we do with our liberty. It's necessary only that on election day we show up and vote for the same guy who promises and will leave us alone in that zone that's most important to us. Now, there's another team on the playing field. We're the Leave Us Alone coalition. They're the Takings coalition. Okay? And so around their table, they view the proper role of government as taking things from some people and giving them to other people. Frequently money and frequently them. Around the table, trial lawyers, the labor union bosses, the two wings of the dependency movement, people who are locked into welfare dependency, and people who make $90,000 a year, managing the dependency of other people, making sure none of them get jobs and become Republicans. Then we have all our friends, the coercive utopians, the people who want to get government grants in order to perfect the rest of us, for moral uplift, to tell us how to run our lives so that we would be the kind of people they wish us to be. These are the people who designed and mandate cars too small to put your entire family into. These are the people who came up with those toilets that don't flush completely. The guys who came up with the light bulbs that convince you you have glaucoma. On the Sabbath, we have to separate the white glass from the brown glass from the green glass for the recycling priests. they have a very long list of thou shalts and thou shalt nots that they wish the government to enforce. Their list is slightly longer and more tedious than Leviticus. So around the left's table, they can function as a movement, as a party, only as long as we are stupid enough to keep throwing taxpayer dollars into the center of the table. As long as we do that, then they can sit around the table, like the scene in the movie after the bank robbery. One for you, one for you, one for you. Okay? They can get along just fine. That's what the stimulus package was all about. It was about taking $800 billion and dumping it in the center of the table. Now, they had a theory they explained called Keynesianism. Here's the theory. If we take $1 from someone who earned it and give it to somebody who's politically connected, we all get richer. Then if Reid, Pelosi, and Obama stand on one side of the lake and each put a bucket into the lake and take the 3 buckets of water around to the other side of the lake, and in front of the MSNBC cameras, they pour the 3 buckets back into the lake has been stimulated to great depth. Now, you laugh, but we're going to do this 800 billion times, and that's what makes the lake so deep. There was no economic theory to this. They wanted $800 billion. And they said it really fast, and guys who went to Harvard said, that makes sense. Okay. Anyway, so the stimulus package of taking money from people who earned it and giving it to people who are politically connected just moves money around, guys. It doesn't create wealth. It doesn't create jobs or opportunities. In fact, you can imagine after a while the guys who get robbed might decide it's not quite worthwhile working on Saturdays. And the guys who get the money may decide it's never worthwhile to actually go work because you get paid for being politically connected and remembering to vote. So it actually damages the economy. It's not some zero-sum game where you just move things from one side to the other. Our job is to stop throwing money into the center of the other team's table. If we do that, and that's, they've already spent the $800 billion plus, and now they're beginning to get nervous, which is why they're demanding tax increases in Washington, D.C., because in their view, the government isn't big enough to keep all the boys fed, happy, and employed from now until the next time they get to vote. And so they're beginning to get nervous. They want more tax increases to throw more cash into the center of the table. But if we do our job properly and say no new taxes and mean it and hold it, then as the cash dwindles, all the guys around the Takings Coalition table begin to look at each other a little bit more like the second to the last scene in those lifeboat movies. Now they're beginning to wonder who they're going to eat or who they're going to throw overboard. Because our friends on the left are not friends and allies. They are competing parasites. And if we do not allow them to gnaw on taxpayers, they will just as cheerfully gnaw on the guy sitting next to them. Our job is to stop the flow of cash into the center of the table for them so that when we meet them in the next election in 2 and 4 years, there are fewer of them and they're shorter. To that end, at Americans for Tax Reform, we have the No Tax Increase Pledge. We ask all candidates for office at the national level and state level to sign a pledge that they'll oppose and vote against efforts to raise taxes. Pretty simple, one sentence. I get calls all the time from the national media. Well, what about this? Would this count? Is it a tax increase? Well, yeah, but then it counts, okay? No. And the left keeps trying to come back with arguments for tax hikes. On our team, we have 235 members of the U.S. House who signed the pledge never to raise taxes, 41 senators, 13 governors, not yours, and 1,200 state legislators around the country have taken the pledge.